Welcome. Myself Dr. Roshni, your OBGYN faculty. So today we are going to talk about our latest exam, the NEET 2024 exam. So in this single PPT discussion, we are going to talk everything about both session 1 and session 2 questions related to obstetrics. So to begin with, the first question, a pregnant woman presents with intrauterine device in place and a thread is clearly visible. Okay, the thread is clearly visible with IUD in situ. She wishes to continue the pregnancy. Okay, she is got pregnant with IUCDs. What is the appropriate next step? Okay, remember with IUCD in situ, the chance of pregnancy is as low as 0.2 to 0.8. 0.2 in LNG-IUS and copper IUDs it is around 0.8. Okay, so this is as low as this. In this also chance of ectopic pregnancy is 0.02. Okay, so the chance of pregnancy per se itself is very rare. But since she's already got pregnant, so now let us see what is the next step. If the thread IUCD is in place and the thread is clearly visible, then you can gently pull out the thread, okay, so that there will not be any complications, because if IUCD is in situ, it can lead to preterm labor, abortions and other complications related to pregnancy per se, okay. So that is the reason you have to remove. Imagine if the thread is not visible, then you should not meddle inside. What you should do is explain the complications, the risks following the continuation of pregnancy to the mother and leave it alone, okay. So now since here in our case the IUCD is in place and the thread is clearly visible, you can gently remove the thread. So let us see where is it given. Perform cesarean section. She will hardly be in her first trimester. Who would do a cesarean section for this? Isn't it? Wrong. Remove the IUCD gently. Yes, remove it gently. Leave IUCD in place. If this is an option if the thread was not visible or IUCD is not visible at all. Okay, maybe it is expelled. In such case, this is the option, because if you cannot see the thread, you cannot meddle inside. Here you have to take the consent of the patient to continue pregnancy. Proceed with medical termination of pregnancy. IUCD per se is not going to cause any congenital anomalies, so you do not have to terminate the pregnancy. Going ahead with the next question. During sacrocolposuspension surgery, to which body landmark is the mesh typically attached in suspension? So directly in the question itself there is an answer, isn't it? Colposuspension means the vaginal vault is getting suspended. So where they are suspending? Sacro. Sacro they've already written. So they're asking you where you will suspend it. So the correct answer will be sacral promontory. So sacrocolposuspension means the vault. So colpo is suspended to the sacrum. So sacral promontory is the correct answer. We use all these three in different sling surgeries like Virchow, Purandrase and other different techniques where we want to put the uterus up. There we use these different other structures to give the control or hold the tissue. Okay, but in sacrocolposuspension, as the name itself mentioned, it is attached to sacral promontory. Going ahead with the next question. A 30-year-old female, para 2 living 2 with history of cervical lengthening. Okay, there is cervical lengthening. If this is the uterus, the cervical lengthening is there. Okay, what is the recommended surgical options? So since there is cervical lengthening, that will present as what? Prolapse, isn't it? Now this is the hymenal ring. So from the hymenal ring, this will be coming out. So the lengthened cervix is outside. So she might have complaints of prolapse. That is why you are going ahead with a surgical management. So what you have to do is simply remove this part of the cervix, isn't it? But you cannot do trachelectomy. The procedure is not trachelectomy. Here what you will do is Fothergill's surgery. Hysterectomy you would definitely not do for a 30-year-old female. Fothergill's procedure. What are the different steps of Fothergill's procedure? Yes. Preliminarily, you have to do a dilatation and curettage. You have to dilate the cervix. If you do not do, if you just amputate the cervix, then it can lead to cervical stenosis. Later, the fluids will get collected inside only, causing endometriosis and other complications. So, before amputation, first always you should do dilatation and curettage of the cavity and then amputation of the cervix, plication of Meckenrod ligaments in front of the cervix to lift the cervix up, and anterior colporrhaphy and posterior colpoperineal colporaphy if ever required. Okay, these are the procedure of Fothergill surgery. This is how you will proceed in a young lady with prolapse due to cervical lengthening. Okay, what are the other different options surgeries that you have? For example, vaginal wall. Anterior vaginal wall is prolapsed. Let us imagine anterior vaginal wall, upper 2/3 is prolapsed. That is cystocele. So you will do anterior colporaphy, isn't it? No, coming to posterior vaginal wall, the lower 2/3 where it is a rectocele. So here you will do what? Colpoperineorrhaphy. Whenever you involve in the posterior vaginal wall, always the perineum will be involved. Anteriorly you will say anterior colporaphy. You will never say posterior colporaphy. It is colpoperineorrhaphy. Okay. And then upper 1/3 of prolapse is enterocele, isn't it? Small intestine bowels. Here with surgery you will do vaginally when you do it is McKay-Caldoplasty. Abdominally when you will do it is a Moskowitz procedure. Okay, that is what is the procedure names. Coming to the anterior and posterior together, it is pelvic floor repair. That is anterior colporaphy and posterior colpoperineorrhaphy. Coming to uterovaginal prolapse, vaginal hysterectomy or Fothergill surgery to preserve the uterus. Coming to vaginal wall following hysterectomy, this is walled prolapse. This is where you will do a case of sacrospinous colpoplexy or colpoclysis, Lefort's procedure. Here, Lefort's is what? Don't confuse Lefort's with Fothergill's. Lefort's colpoclysis is to obstruct the vaginal wall. Okay, you will bring the anterior and posterior vaginal wall together. This is done in a very elderly patient where chance of having or where the coital actus is not there or where she cannot bear the surgical procedure for a long time. Okay. Then lastly, if it is a uterine prolapse in congenital patient or congenital or any other disordered patient where uterine prolapse only is there, where you want to preserve uterus, you can do sling surgeries. Okay, as we have already told, Purandare's or Virkut's procedure. Pelvic organ prolapse with stress incontinence is there, then TOT or TVT procedures or abdominally Bursch colposuspension can be done. These are the different types of operations that you can do. Going ahead with the next question. A woman with twin pregnancy undergoes ultrasound, revealing that one fetus is estimated to be 1 month older than the other. There is a difference of almost 4 weeks and more in this patient. What is the likely diagnosis? Superfetation and fecundation. This is the confusion, isn't it? So what happens in superfecundation? It is a single cycle. Okay, single cycle, but 2 eggs are released which are getting fertilized by 2 separate sperms and that too at 2 separate act of coitus. 2 separate act of coitus, 2 separate eggs, 2 separate sperms are fertilizing them. Okay, here the difference will be there. Maybe like a week, 10 days to 10 days. Like that difference will be there, a week to 10 days, but not as high as 1 month. So 1 month means what? It is superfetation. Here 2 menstrual cycles. Okay, 2 menstrual cycles will be there where the egg is released in 2 different cycles to this month and next month. In this month of act of coitus, 1 egg is got fertilized. In next month act of coitus where the different egg is fertilized. So this says the gap of 1 month which they have already mentioned here. So fetation is where there is 1 month gap in 2 different menstrual cycle it is happening. Whenever the decidua is still there, the decidual space is not completely obliterated, till then this can happen. Theoretically it can happen as high as up to 12 weeks. Okay, up to 12 weeks. But remember ovulation itself will be stopped by then. That is why it likely will not happen. If it happens, it is a superfetation. Okay, next question. What is the most likely diagnosis in the given picture? Okay, so here you can see this is one uterus and this is one uterus which is completely not fused at all. So when it is not fused at all, then what do you say it as? It is a uterine didelphys. If it is fused partially, then it becomes biconjugate uterus. If it is fused but the septum is not completely resolved, then it becomes septate uterus. So this is the picture. Hypoplasia of cervix, vagina, fundus, tubal or combined, and uniconjugate uterus with rudimentary horn communicating or non-communicating, and didelphys where complete 2 uterus and cervix is there, you can see. And then biconjugate uterus where the fusion has happened but it is partial. Maybe it is completely not fused, here partially not fused. And septate uterus, the fusion has happened but the septum is not completely resolved. It is there. It is complete septate or partial partial septate. Lastly, arcuate uterus and diethyl stelbestrol drug induced, that is T-shaped uterus. These are the different uterus shapes. This classification, alternate years at least they are asking these questions. Okay, so it is very important you know this classification and what are the names, what is the surgeries for this. For bicornuate uterus, the surgery is Strassman's or Johnson-Jones procedure. For septate uterus, hysteroscope and septoplasty is done. Okay, going ahead with the next question, identify the image. Of course, this is what? This is a submucosal structure. This is a submucosal fibroid. Very clearly it is shown. First, submucosal fibroid is only the correct answer. Endometrial polyp, there is no stalk and it doesn't look polypoidal, so this is not an endometrial polyp. Uterine malignancy, it is a smooth surface, not ragged and it is not looking hazy, so this is not a malignancy. Definitely this is not a pregnancy. So let us see what are the different types of fibroids that you know. The basic three types are there. One is submucosal, intramural, subserosal. So the one inside the cavity is called submucosal. The one inside the muscular structure, that is intramural. The one outside just below the serosal layer like this is the subserosal. So the classification, the FIGO classification is categorized like this. Okay, submucosal fibroid, it starts with 0 is pedunculated submucosal intracavitary. Okay, submucosal fibroid. 1 is it is a submucosal fibroid but less than 50% is intramural, and 2 is it is submucosal but more than 50% is intramural. So this becomes a submucosal type. Then coming to 3, this is where completely it is intramural, 100% is intramural but it touches the endometrium. If this is the endometrial layer, this is the intramural layer, the fibroid is completely inside but it is touching that of the endometrial layer. This becomes 3, and 4 is completely intramural, neither touching endometrium nor touching the subserosal layer. 5 is subserosal but more than 50% is intramural, and 6 is subserosal but less than 50% is intramural. Though when I am saying it looks difficult, when you read yourself it is very easy to recollect this. Subserosal pedunculated is 7, and others like cervical, parasitic, intraligamentary are the other parasitic fibroids are 8. Okay, so remember in this they have repeatedly asked what is stage 2 to 5 called as. This is called as hybrid fibroids. Okay, this also has been repeated question, hybrid fibroids.